Thank you guys for coming today. Very excited. Somebody said, wow, the pandemic really feels over now that we're like getting back together. So it's good stuff. So thank you guys for being on the panel here. Starting with Grant Marcks. He introduced himself, a partner with Riverside Company, leading private equity firm in the franchise space. I'm sure now many of you can put a name in with a face of the guy who's been cold calling you over these last couple years. But Grant has over 15 years experience in the private equity space. We've been fortunate to work with his firm on numerous deals, and Riverside, through his leadership, has become very well known, very respected. So we're very honored to have him on the panel. Satya, next to Grant, co-founded the New Spring Franchise Group, also over 15 years of experience in the lower middle market. He's partnered with a number of our clients, and they've all really had a good experience, very hands-on, kind of keeping the founders involved in the business, some of the stuff we're going to talk about. He's also very local, in fact, so small, I saw him the other day dropping his daughter off at a birthday party, and that's when I asked him to be on the panel. And Kevin DuBois. A good friend. I've known Kevin for years, even before he partnered up with his current PE sponsor. So really to see that journey from the founder, working the trade shows himself and kind of building through, and really they've built quite a brand. Founder of Lapel's Dry Cleaning. Now it's known as Clean Brands, with a number of brands. They have over 2,300 locations worldwide, and we're very fortunate to have watched them grow over the years, and he continues to lead and really a practical approach to business expansion and innovation, which makes it a unique franchisor and very, very special. So thank you guys for being here. So as always, maybe we'll be able to pass the mic, not sure, since we're struggling as it is here. Keep this open. We want to have questions. We want this to be interactive. I'll kind of kick this off. We were talking before with some of this stuff. I'll start with you, Kevin. Now that you've been through this process, you always say, what do you wish you had known now when you were back sort of sitting in that seat as a founder? I think we'll pass that over.
I like this mini microphone approach. Well, you're coming out with a big question. There's a ton that I've learned about the world of private equity from 2018 when I did my first deal. And, everybody had said to me, once you get to that 100 store mark, these private equity guys are going to start falling out of the sky. And sure enough, they were not lying. That's exactly what had happened. And quite honestly, as in most of the things in my life, I just got lucky. I found the right private equity sponsor or partner, because I really didn't know some of the things that I probably should have known, and maybe a lot of people should know. And those things were as basic as, hey, they're going to write you a check, and what happens to that check? Like, where's it going to go? Because I thought, hey, I'm looking at these zeros, and I can picture those in my bank account on the day of closing. And as the journey progressed, was disappointed to find out that it wasn't all coming to me, but that was a negotiation. So I think that's one thing that I would say, like the cash coming into the business on day one was a negotiation. And then I'll rattle off just some other terms that I've learned. And if you are a franchisor thinking about having a sponsor, private equity partner, Google these terms, look them up, or call Kevin and I'm happy to explain them to me. But those things would be things like liquidation preference, even just the most basic of preferred return. I was 3 years into my deal before I realized what that term meant and how much dollars that meant getting shipped out of my bank account. So those are important things to learn. I wish I had a better understanding of it. I feel like I've learned a lot about private equity since that point. Even just distribution and how that works, I had run my own business and I was accustomed to, at the end of the year, here's what I made, this is what's left over, and that's mine. And that would, that's a little bit different when you have partners, especially private equity partners, just how that flows or how it works. So Those would be like the immediate big
Yeah.
takeaways.
So no, that's great, and it's a good segue to a question for Satya. What are some of the reasons that founders reach out to PE? Right? Is it purely just a liquidation event? Is it growth? Like, what do you see as some of the biggest reasons?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the stage that particular business is in. There are certain founders that have taken it to a really large level. They've done everything they can possibly do with it, and they really they're ready to go to the beach, which they deserve. They've put their life's work into it, and they want to monetize it, and they're ready to no longer be involved with the business on a day-to-day basis. So it can take everything from that all the way to, I've gotten it to a certain level, I've proven out certain things, but I really see another level of opportunity. But in order to be able to achieve that level of opportunity, I may need to take on a partner. Certainly, there may be certain financial capital reasons for it, but there may also be human capital and infrastructure development reasons for it.
So as a founder, you should really kind of sort that out. You should be not going to the market saying, I don't know, make a deal, but sort out what you want out of it.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of thinking about it, is what do you want as the owner of the business? And what do you want in a partner? Well, one, do you want to partner? At the end of the day, private equity is just another partner in your business. They may own a majority, they may own a minority, but it's another partner. And if you want to take on a partner, what do you want that partner to be like?
Excellent. So Grant, if you're one of those founders, as I lose my mic here, if you're one of those founders and you only had one question to ask a potential PE firm, what would it be?
So I tell folks that the number one thing I would always ask is for references. We offer references of every partner that we've ever worked with, good, bad, and otherwise, right? So don't only ask for the best references where you've returned 5 times your money. Ask them for the deals where maybe things didn't go right, and what exactly did Riverside or any other private equity firm do along the way to help right that ship? So I encourage folks to really think about, to Satya's point, like what they want, what the partner should look like. Realize that you guys probably have hold more of the cards than you appreciate, and you can be picky and really choose your partner wisely. Take your time, diligence them as much as they're going to diligence you. Because we will diligence you, and it'll feel like a financial proctology exam. But that's my best advice: is really ask for references and spend as much time as you feel like you can or want to getting to know your prospective partner or partners. Court multiple. Talk to me, talk to Satya, talk to 25 of our closest friends. Ultimately, you're signing up for 5, 7. Maybe 10 years of living with this partner. And so that's my best advice.
Anybody have any questions from the audience that you want to kind of, please?
I'm kind of where he was all the way down, right? So my question would be, not just why would you look into a private equity per se, for exit or for infrastructure needs, but what do they provide you? Like you said, it's like looking for a partner. Partners provide different things. Does private equity provide constantly, or does it vary?
So the question was, I'm just going to repeat because of the lack of microphone, make sure I got it right. Basically, what does private equity bring to the table besides just the finances and the money? What else are they looking to provide?
Okay, well, to start, I wasn't sure what they brought to the table on day one. I knew the check, like everybody knows that part of it for sure. They did bring that. The thing for me, and the sponsor that I work with is a little bit unique in that they're much smaller than these guys' companies. And they swim in smaller pools on purpose. They work with companies that are smaller, and that's really a niche for them. The name of the company is Grable Stewardship, and they've been wonderful just at a high level. The things that they've brought to the table for me is, one, looking back, I realized how deficient I was in accounting, and that's something that every private equity company will let you know. I was very self-confident in my accounting skills at that point and have come to realize how deficient I was in accounting. I really actually enjoy accounting at this point. It's a fun tool once you get good at it. And not only in accounting, but in all aspects of the business. So whether it's recruiting, IT, operations, you have this group of people, for the most part, that have been there, done that you can turn around and ask for guidance. So that was an unintended consequence for me. And then sort of a sub-level, at least in my relationship, is the limited partners that come along with the private equity company, right? So, there's another group of people not represented here, which are the people writing checks to their company so that they can write them to my company. And those people are typically not only very wealthy, given, very intelligent, and have a lot of contacts. So when I say something like, hey, does anybody know anybody at Airbnb? Within minutes, it's, yeah, we've got the VP of HR. Does anybody know anybody at Stitch Fix? Yeah, we got, so that was a completely unintended consequence, but these guys, the sponsors, the private equity partners, they want to add value to your company. They're hungry to prove their worth to you. So those things come at a great benefit, at least for me and in my relationship.
I think one thing that's worth noting when we do talk about private equity is that, it's easy to think of the private equity universe as a commoditized, monolithic universe. But the reality is, if you've got 10 private equity groups, they're each going to think, act, and look at things in a completely different way. Every single one of them. Because ultimately, when you think about a partnership is a people-based business, right? And no two people are alike. And so even if you've got two groups that ostensibly look like they're evaluating the same types of companies, making the same types of investments, they are fundamentally going to approach it differently because of that partnership. And so what I'd argue, and I think Grant made a really great point earlier, is that you have your choice of who you want to partner with. And in some ways, it's no different than as a franchisor picking your franchisees, right? Who you want to partner with and sign that 10-year franchise agreement with is a really important decision for both sides. And it's, you can potentially get out of it, but it's really painful. Well, this is no different. It is a long-term partnership where it's hard to get out of. And so finding the right partner is incredibly important.
I'll just add that to bring it to life, like our firm is really good with service economy businesses emerging to kind of mid-scale, helping them get from point A to point B, brand dev, operations, finance, all the things that Kevin was talking about. We've never and probably will never do a restaurant deal or a hospitality deal. Satya's firm has done 3, 4,
half of our portfolio.
Yeah. So I know we look very similar. Satya and I, we look like we're brothers, but yeah, we're different.
Well, you said, and you guys said yesterday, you even cooperate, and you'll be like, oh no, call one another if it's really not a good fit. So it's a very collegiate sort of thing. It's got to be a fit for everybody. Great question, by the way. Thank you very much. You had a question as well?
Yes. My question was, if I hate to kind of go back to always COVID, but if my best numbers were there because of my industry, it's still taking a while to come back. How can I guess, really explain though my projections to a PE that I'm still, I want to franchise what I'm doing, but I still kind of got to go off whole numbers.
So the question is, if your numbers really haven't rebounded since COVID or that, and I'll kind of expand on that question. One of the questions I had is when it comes to valuation, or is it royalty streams, franchise fees, what are the most important piece of how you value a franchisor?
I'll start more directly with your question. Can I just ask another question? I forget. What industry are you in?
So we're a mobile store, like a Trader Walmart for nursing.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
They had to still put that in bed.
Of course. Yeah. So Satya's firm, my firm, everyone in private equity probably thought too much about what COVID did to the positive or to the negative for different industries, different verticals for a long, long time, right? Home services, disproportionately, senior care disproportionately benefited, unfortunately, from COVID. Restaurant, traditional four-wall retail, fitness, et cetera. You had retail businesses that were closed for 13, 14, 15 weeks at a time. So it takes a while for those numbers to kind of run through the wash, I guess is the way I phrase it, right? When you're more than 12 months in arrears from where that kind of dip point was, and even 2021 and 2022, parts of 2022 were still impacted. But I think by this point, the way that we largely look at the world is that this should be a normalized year. 2023 is a relatively normalized period. 2024, we're far enough removed that we're in this room, right? That we're doing this for the first time in 5 years. So I think that's the way that we think about it. And then we benchmark it against all the way back to 2019, because that's the last time that we had a normalized year. So I don't know if that answers your question directly, but I think...
Basically, yes, I could still kind of use those numbers as part of my debt.
Yes. I would say if your last 12 months numbers are going to be fairly representative of what people would call like a normalized market. And people won't give you disproportionate credit or ding you disproportionately for what your numbers may have looked like, this time 3 years ago. And then I forgot what you asked, honestly. So I'm just going to pass the mic to Satya.
Yeah, I think Tom was asking about how we in the private equity seat sort of value businesses and what we look like, and I think Tom talked about royalties, EBITDA, units, industry, and the reality is it's sort of all of the above is really what it is. I think we talked a little bit about our when you think about most private equity firms, right? This is not as much as I would like it to be. It's not my personal money, or it's not Grant's personal money. And I think it's worth sort of thinking about what a private equity group is, right? We go out
Tiny sliver.
Yes, a tiny little sliver of it, exactly. We go out and raise capital from other limited partners that have entrusted us with their capital to go make investments. And we've told them that, we think that we can go make investments in these sorts of companies and provide a certain return over this sort of time period. And so what is it that we're looking to do when we're making an investment is we're trying to figure out, will that investment provide a reasonable return on capital to our limited partners within the time frame that we've told them? And in order to do that, what needs to occur? More often than not, so for example, at New Spring Franchise, all we do and all we focus on are franchise businesses. That's the entire universe of companies that we invest into. And we typically look to invest into those businesses when we feel like they're at an exciting inflection point. An inflection point where they've completely proven out their concept viability, figured out their business model, their customer value proposition, their franchisee value proposition, validation, satisfaction, unit economics. And now that founder and owner is ready to really accelerate growth. And the reality is that we've made 7 investments over the last 4 years. Quite frankly, all of those companies were already successful before we got there. And if we did not invest, they would have continued to be successful. And what I think if you talk to them, they would say, we partnered with New Spring Franchise because we felt like we could accelerate our growth even quicker, more sustainably, more successfully, and get some help bringing in additional folks that could help us out as part of that process. And so when we sort of think about valuation, we're thinking about where is the business... where is the business today? Where can the business go with our partnership? And what does that look like?
Perfect. Now, Kevin, you made a comment about that, about the non-recurring revenue being discounted down to zero.
Yes. I won't take too much time on this one. because you guys probably have better insight. We do look at businesses to acquire one-off in our world. Our sanity test on COVID years is 2019 and 2023. What's the number? Is 2023 up from 2019? Yes. Okay. COVID affected it. Healthy business, and we project out. If 2023 is down from 2019, we're a little apprehensive about that. So I can tell you the way that our private equity sponsors look at the difference between recurring revenue and non-recurring. Can you hear me all right still? Okay. So first time I built my budget, I was very proud of having recurring and non-recurring revenue. Recurring revenue is the sweet spot. That's the royalties. That's predictable. It's, you know, it's coming in. Non-recurring things like initial franchise fees coming in. When I built it out, they said, okay, well, let's just scratch this first 8 rows off, which was my non-recurring. They discounted that to 0 and said, you can't count on that. It's not predictable. Let's talk about recurring. So that's how some private equity companies will look at recurring versus non-recurring.
But it's a good theme. I mean, generally speaking, I think some of you can hear me, is that, you know, as franchisors, you're in the royalty business, not necessarily the franchise fee business. And I think that, right, I have to, I put my arm up, twist. Oh, there you go. So no, that's good. That's a good validation of like being in the royalty business. It's typically what they're looking at. On that, so not to flip negative here, but I'm a lawyer, so I get to do that once in a while. What are some of the deal killers, red flags? Yeah.
Yeah. You guys do that the same way as you just said?
Discounted to 0, probably a little bit aggressive. I would say the way that we value businesses is we look at a multiple of royalties. And if there's EBITDA, great. That gets us more excited. But we value royalties a lot more heavily than we value one-time fees. And by the way, royalties said another way is recurring revenue, as Kevin said. So that can be in the form of, hey, my franchisees have to purchase, all of this product from me, or I charge a 1% tech fee, or what have you. So all the stuff that goes into the recurring, consistent payment bucket, we value kind of all in the same way. What was your question?
Well, so then I was, wait, did you have a follow-up on that? Go ahead.
Well, you have to talk about multiple. So my question is, there's really these emerging brands. It's really becoming practice to for business, grade 5, 10, etc. So I would like to get clarity on all things being equal. If the brand has, say, for example, 45 open and 57 still not open, versus 45 open period. How do you weigh out sold not open? How does it impact?
The question is how the impact of sold but not open.
Yeah, and how do we view that? How do we value it? How do we treat it? So we look at a couple things. We look at the track record of being able to open your doors historically, right? So if you've shown consistently that you can open 5, 10, 15 new locations a year sustainably, we'll probably give you credit for that out into the future. We actually tend to discount like a excessive ratio. So if we see like that there's a north of 2-to-1 sold to not open ratio, even 1-to-1, like that's a really high number. It's probably unlikely that all of those that have been sold and aren't opened are going to on the schedule that you've outlined. And we're going to make phone calls to diligence that, right? Many of those are going to be 3-packs, 5-packs, and we're going to have to, through our diligence process, call those franchisees and validate, hey, are you happy? Are you performing? Are you intending to open your second location, your third location? On what schedule? Have you signed leases? Have you, begun site selection process? Where are you in that kind of trajectory? Because that's what we're doing, to Satya's point. We're mapping out the trajectory of, hey, how sustainable is this growth? What can we do to accelerate it? And maybe the answer is that all 57 of the locations are going to open in the next 3 years, but we're going to go through with a fine-tooth comb and validate that. So I don't know if you would add anything to that.
Well, it kind of goes into the, I don't know if you want to call it the, 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 well, it kind of goes into the that could be a red flag. I mean, I've heard that from people
the red
doing
flag
the
question.
yeah. So then that's a good segue into the red flag questions. What are some of the other things that maybe you don't think is a red flag, but you guys look at and you're like, pass.
I'll take for two quick things and then pass along. So red flags to us are heavy item 3, meaning your litigation is extensive, and not all litigation is created equal, but if there's like a lot of franchisee to franchisor litigation, that's a problem, and that'll drive us and many other folks away. The other thing I would say, and it kind of speaks to the ability to open, is if we see negative trends, like net downward trends in terms of franchisee openings. So if there's a lot of franchisee churn, and not offset by new openings, that's a huge red flag. And as Satya said, we're here to grow, and we're in for growth. Those trends are indicative of two things: one, inability to grow in the future, but two, franchisees aren't very happy, and franchisees aren't going to probably validate. And so all those things present like real challenges to us restarting the franchise development funnel and pipeline and getting it back to growth. So
yeah, I think, when we undertake this due diligence effort, really it's just a fancy way of saying, are we investing in what we believe we're investing in, and what we're investing in, do we believe that it will be able to achieve what we're all aligned around being able to achieve? And so that's all that really is. And so part of that, for us, a big piece of it is, just franchisee satisfaction, franchisee validation, and franchisee relationships. So, like Grant said, we'll go through that process of actually reaching out to all the franchisees and understanding how they view the brand. Are they validators? Are they unhappy? Are they happy? Most of our investments, we hire Tom and his team to help us navigate, to say, hey, here are all the franchise agreements. Here's their FDD. Here are vulnerabilities. Here are things that they maybe should have done, they didn't do. And those things will rise, you're really going to rank order them, right? I mean, some things are just such major issues that you almost can't invest in the bit. You, on the other end, would not want to invest in that business, right? And then there will be some of the, boy, I really wish they had their FDD drafted this way, but it's not the end of the world, and let's fix it on a go-forward basis. So Tom will sort of reach out to us and say, hey, this isn't the end of the world. It'll be okay, but, going forward, we should fix this. And so those are the types of, red flags that we're looking at. And so really the big red flag for us is, what is really going to impair the value of the business or make something impossible to achieve in terms of the growth?
Great. Question here for Kevin. Change subjects a little bit about timing. So maybe you could speak to how long it took from the day you said, ooh, I really need someone, or maybe they reached out to you. How long, if you're really starting to think about this process, from the day you say, you know what, I want to do this, until the day you sit at the close?
Flashbacks, battle scars. I'm going to say, so the one thing that I would say is that these gentlemen to my right are very good at this process of buying businesses. Q of E, quality of earnings, is something they're very good at. And so the sign but not open, entrepreneurs and franchisors are wired very differently than private equity. When you say to private equity, I got 100 stores, 27 open, 73 are signed but not open, they're starting a liability checklist there. And they'll say, how much does it cost to open one then? Is there flights, meals, hotels? Do you have the manpower to do that? Like they will see through that stuff so quickly. They're very good at that. And just to speak about multiples for a second, because this is something that I've gotten smarter about over the years. I saw like the Playables deals that went out. I forget what that number was or the multiple. You guys, I'm sure know it.
Can't count that
And thought, well, geez, I can get to that store count. I'm past that store count. The store count doesn't matter to these guys. They're really fixated on what that earnings look like, and they look at it in different buckets. As that multiple of that earnings gets higher, the multiple that you get will get higher, and it gets really high when you get to that earnings of 5 to 6 million-ish. You're in a completely different world than the 1, 2, 3, 4 million. So that would be like my just general take. The length of time it takes really depends on the company that you're dealing with, how many attorneys are involved and who are handling it, how organized they are. No disrespect to attorneys there.
The attorneys
I'm
are the
just
worst.
saying
Built my whole business on that.
they have their different, buckets that they will go through. The company that I worked with was small, lean and mean. They didn't have the manpower to put me through what you would probably go through with one of their companies, quite honestly. So from start to finish, maybe 4 months or so. And that's probably on the quick side.
Yeah, I'd say for us, no two processes are really the same, quite frankly. And so much of it sometimes is just really dependent upon the founding team and their ecosystem advisors and really what they're looking to do. So we've completed in investments in, I'd say as quickly as about 75 to 90 days. But then, we've also we've had investments that have taken literally almost 3 years. Now, when I say 3 years, what I mean is it's a really long courting period. They're trying to figure out what they want to do. They're trying to figure out what kind of partner. We're trying to figure out, quite frankly, are they the right partner for us? I mean, again, these are long-term marriages. You really got to figure out what it is you guys want. And so we spend a lot of time wanting to spend time with the founders and owners and operators that are leading those businesses to make sure we're aligned. I mean, for us, and maybe it's worth noting, and every private equity group is going to be a little bit different, but we don't typically buy out 100% of companies. We typically buy out maybe 60% or 70%. And so the founders, owners, and operators of those businesses own a really large chunk of those businesses. They continue to operate those businesses in a lot of cases post-investment. So our bet is on them. That's what our real bet is. Obviously, we're betting on the brand and we're betting on the unit economics. We're betting on all these things. But at the end of the day, we're betting on those founders to lead those brands with our support. And so, for us, that's what we're, as much as we're spending our time on all these technical type things like a Q of V and franchisor legal and franchise agreements, it's the alignment with the team that we are investing behind.
Nothing to add. Yeah.
Timing.
Timing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
And by the way, you said that you mentioned that. Sorry, I didn't cut you off, but you said about that fastest was 75 days. But that is that sort of like once you have the economics of the deal and the handshake? Yeah. So that's the closing. So sort of maybe speak to timing.
In our 3 years.
How long does it take to get to that point?
I'll just tell the example of, we just acquired and partnered with a business called US Lawns earlier this year, where we had been courting that business for 5 years, meaning we met them at every conference. We sat down with the CEO. We had talked with them off and on for 5 years. We even lobbed in a bid at one point a couple of years ago. And it's a subsidiary of a big corporate parent called Brightview. They had a whole corporate development team that was, when the time was right, and that turned out to be, unfortunately, over the holidays for some of my colleagues, in December of 2023, the time to get from that point where we negotiated a deal to close was 45 days.
Wow.
So 5 years in the making, 45 days from like negotiated deal to close.
That sounds like our sales process.
But that's like, again, because in part, the availability of the data, their readiness for the sale, and our comfortability with the market, the management team, and all that stuff that was already pre-vetted for years and years and years before we got to the signing, the LOI signing.
Great. Question here?
To questions. One, when you talk about multiples, I think you mentioned both, obviously, recurring revenue from royalties, and then you mentioned EBITDA, sort of profit within the company. We're owned and operated mostly, and we're starting to franchise now. I mean, how do you look at that multiple on? Do you typically look at that franchise royalty stream more from a multiple basis, or do you also look at EBITDA and profit of the business?
We certainly look at both. That being said, inevitably the value that's derived from the franchise component of the business, the recurring royalty that has a reasonable amount of operating leverage, is going to be more valued more highly. So if you took, just any XYZ business that was generating $5 million of EBITDA entirely from a recurring royalty stream versus $5 million of EBITDA entirely from a company-owned based business with a little bit of franchising, the franchise component is going to end up generating a higher valuation.
Yeah, same answer. And maybe to bring it home to the point where we've looked at some of our franchise brands that have some corporate doors and said, actually over 5-7 year horizon, it's more lucrative for us to maybe even give away or, sell for $1 some of these corporate units to our franchisee base, because the multiple on the royalty that we're going to get over time is going to be worth more. So hopefully that illustrates the point.
So question, Grant, on the timing. Let's say, and I'm not as ordered, let's say some of these things are going to really scale. They're doing well.
Yeah.
Is it worthwhile talking to people like the two of you years in advance and just keeping you in the loop, not asking for money, but get the story in front of you early?
It's self-serving for me to say this, obviously, but yes.
We're here to do business.
But the reality is, to the example that I gave, like we were very, very comfortable with that situation scenario to the point where we knew we wanted to own that business for years. Now, anyone in this room will tell you, if you've bought a home, you probably had multiple buyers and suitors, for your business come through, and you dressed it up and made it all pretty. And I would encourage literally everyone in this room, this is not self-serving, to do that, to think about how to prepare your business, talk to your attorneys, talk to your accountants, talk to a banker, a broker, what have you. They're going to help you get organized for that process. They're going to help you pretty your business up and make it sparkle and shine. But if you have a small handful of prospective buyers who you've been in consistent contact with for years, those people are going to be at the front of the pack, and they're probably going to get more aggressive because of that. I don't know if you would agree, but
yeah, I think I echo everything that was just said. I also think there's sort of that idea of certainty, right? And the longer you've known someone, the likelihood of that certainty has gone up because you've already had a predetermined relationship that goes back years. And so I do think having that long relationship is worth it. I mean, that's what our business is.
We're in the people business. So I think we have time for one more question.
My question is also on the timing. How do you know when to go really aggressive on scaling? So a little background on my business. I'm a bubble tea cafe concept that started in Long Island as my first location. So I have passed all the FTD document, everything 3 years ago. But I really I think today when I look back, I made a mistake of trying to be perfect, trying to have every single store run as the way I'm running it. But I also at the same time, I think I'm losing the opportunity to grow for the past 3 years. Do you think is there such thing as mistake as trying to be too perfect?
The question is growth versus perfection, right? How many scars can you take? What's more important?
At the same time, I do have very strong advantage of having the supply chain, very tight control on the supply chain. I import myself from Taiwan and China myself. So revenue-wise, not only the first royalty fee, all the standard fees that's available to me, but I also have supply chain percentage.
I think it is it's a tough question, quite frankly, no matter what stage you're at, right? Whether you're early on with sub 10 units, whether you're at 25 to 50 units, or whether you're even at 100 units. I mean, fundamentally, what you're where you're going with that is the allocation of time and resources to be able to grow. And I think with most people, you want to grow, but not just grow for the sake of growing, but you want to grow while keeping the integrity of the brand, the product, and what you're providing to your customer, and doing it in a sustainable and successful way that is durable. And so, the reality is that no two situations are the same. And so, I think you really have to make an assessment at your individual brand of what you can do and what you cannot do. I think, if you are trying to get true perfection, I think that's hard to do in a franchise business. I think that's really hard. And you're fundamentally in the franchise business. It's a partnership with franchisees, with each side believing that both groups are bringing something to the table.
I actually got over 200 applications. I turned majority of them down. So right now we are at location 11 and 3 to 4 in the making. But now I look back, feel like I could go more aggressive on the
It sounds like you're growing sustainably, methodically. Don't let perfection get in the way of very, very good. Having said that, do take a fine, approach, a really refined approach to franchise selection. You're still in that, ramp up period where each incremental franchisee is going to really matter. It's going to impact what you're going to have to put into your item 19. And, these are people who you're going to spend at 11 units, 1/11 of your time with. In any given week. So, you really have to get the franchisees right. Where's Gary Occhiogrosso? He told me at one point, you're not in the business of selling tea, you're in the business of selling franchises, right? So, yeah, all right. It's a good quote. It's memorable.
But you got to hit it right in the middle, right? I mean, there's a balance there, because most new franchisors are very afraid of dying of starvation, but you can also die of indigestion. And if you grow too fast, that's just as painful. It's actually a way uglier death as well. So you got to hit the middle. I mean, if you have 11 franchisees doing well, they're your customers that will sell the next batch.
And also, I think I built the infrastructure enough to support 50 to 75 franchisees while I was at store number 5. So that's a lot of cost on the corporate side. So,
but that's the right approach. I mean, it's grow slow to grow fast, right? Get to the point that you guys are interested, that the market's proved out, there's something there, and then you can hit. So as we wrap up here and we drop dessert, and by the way, we have the room for another 45 minutes to an hour. We can continue to networking. Now that they turned the buzzing off, it'll be easier to hear each other. So I always like to close with kind of one question. We'll start there, Kevin, and work backwards. If you're here in the room, what's the one thing, right? There's so much information. By the way, great answers, great information. We're going to have this being filmed here, thanks to Aaron Atko, and we're going to post this online for people who didn't see that and who want to see it again. But I always like to close with one question. If you can walk away with sort of one thing, right? One thing, one nugget out of here that's really important to this process of partnering with private equity, what would it be?
Well, I think Grant said something that kind of hit home, which is you do have more power if you have a solid business than you think you do. And I think all of those deal points that have come up throughout the course of the day are all very much negotiable. I think the typical entrepreneur, franchisor doesn't recognize that. And I think it is very important to vet out that sponsor just like they're vetting you out. And I also think it's important to, just as they're trying to figure out what your mid and long-term goals are, make sure you check with them on theirs, because if they're a smaller company growing very quickly, that company is going to look and act very different. Your partner is going to look like a different person 5 and 10 years out. And then just cycle time, like that cycle time didn't come up today. And sometimes that's the loudest voice in the room. Like, you're going to get into a private equity cycle, and how long is that cycle, and what is the expectation of your sponsor? Do we got to get in and out of this in the same cycle? Is there some evergreen structure that allows you to carry it forward? Again, dumb luck on my behalf, I got into a cycle that had a 37-year life, and I had no idea that was the case until I realized, like, hey, I don't want, I want to do this for a long time. So those would be sort of the high-level things for me.
Yeah, I think my one comment would be try and make an assessment of what it is you're looking for. What do you want to do? What do you want in a partner? What are the things that are important to you? And then try and find the partner that aligns with that, and where you're going to find overlap. But I think it's, do you want to sell 100% and you want to leave? Do you want a partner that's going to support you in building this business? I think there's so many variations of that question, but fundamentally it's, what do you want as the owner of that business?
Best thing you can do as a franchisor is, besides have a great concept, which you all have, get great franchisees in the door, keep them happy, provide them with a service that is going to make them happy, make them want to open more, make sure it's a well-returning business, so whatever cash they're laying out to buy the franchise is going to come back in a reasonable time frame. If you can do all those things, private equity is going to be chasing after you, hand over fist. So that's my best advice. And then you got to deal with me. Yeah, so that's the worst. No, I know, I'm kidding. Yes, amen.
Great. Well, thank you guys. Round of applause for our panel here. Appreciate it very much. And I think we're going to do this again in May. So enjoy your desserts, everyone.